Unity is the name for peace, the strategy of Chiara Lubich. It's edited by Città Nuova, edited by Maddalena Maltese, promoted by the Commission for Peace. By introducing immediately our guests to you. In connection from New York, Maddalena Maltese. Are you there, Maddalena? Yes. She's a journalist. She's the communication director for Religion for Peace International. She's correspondent for Città Nuova, agency here, and she's a curator of a book, and she's the representative of New Humanity for New York, and she's the editor of the book. From Egypt, Munir Farak. From Cairo, is a doctor, is a consultant for the healthcare strategies and systems in Egypt, is an ordinary member of the Pontifical Academy Pro-Life, professor of bioethics of the Oriental Institute of Giza in Egypt, is also a part of the Committee for Peace as well. Then from Damascus, should have been present at Let. She couldn't be connected, so we'll show you a video and I give her greetings and also we'll share her reflection. And then we have Aziz Sadek, he's from Iraq. He's a student who moved to France after the war. And a witness of this has been published in the book as well. Then we have Maria Esther Salamanca. She's a part of the Committee for Peace from Spain. She's a professor of international and private rights at the University of Madrid, and she's the representative of New Humanity in Geneva. Hello to everyone. So we have been a team, and some will also join us later on. You can write in YouTube the questions, your feedbacks, your what you will need to speak of. What we had very much at heart, we are speaking about peace, and there are some reflections, some thoughts, some witnesses, proposals in order to continue the journey towards a new humanity, a renewed humanity. I would like to start quoting some sentence of Chiara Lubich that is taken by the message that she gave to the 8th Convention of Religion for Peace. And today they sound so much updated of today. Why? Because we are experiencing together with all of humanity of how much is vital the fraternity that we need to build every day. Never as before we realize how each human beings are interdependent. These are Chiara Lubich's words, and that only together we can build a world that is reconciled. Never as before, like today, we are looking for a common way, a dialogue that is building and a reciprocal knowledge. To Maddalena, journalist and editor of a book, I will ask a question. You have written for Città Nuova since the conflict in Syria started. You wrote about 100 articles, more or less. Could you tell us your experience? What has brought you to live and work to build peace? Well, in my work as a journalist, I had the opportunity to follow so many situations of conflict, and especially the situation of the war in Syria has been one of the strongest for me, because every day for 2 years, I've seen situations of hunger, of people that were under the bombs, horrors in Damascus. And every day, every week, I spoke with Pascal, with Virgo, and their words brought me the reality there. It touched me very deeply, this experience of horrors in the daily contact. That on one hand, there were situations of horrors, like 2 children that have been killed on a terrace of their building by a bomb that has been exploded. Or another one that found the beheaded head of a child in front of her door. And yet I never heard from them any words of hatred or wishing them ill or death, but only speaking about love, solidarity, were like the anointing that were like a balsam in their lives. But the same, I experienced what my experience in Palermo, where I lived, and where I found myself in the midst of people that had been killed by organized crime and their families. They have been victims of corruptions. And I spoke with Roberto, Carla, Rodolfo. They were talking to me about forgiveness, love of neighbor, and as pain as a tool to innovate and do better. I've lived the last attack in Syria from the US in New York. Can you imagine? I lived on the other side, and now I lived it from there. But even here, Joe, Jonathan, and many others were choosing to build and to find funds, for example, to buy a car or to renovate a house, rather than using words or to engage in a political debate that was fruitless. So they chose being bridges of peace when maybe their government chose something else. So even there, to my questions, why did they make these choices in Aleppo, in Palermo, in New York, were unanimous. I knew Chiara Lubich. I've known her. I live like her. She taught me how to love. She taught me to live for unity and fraternity. She taught me forgiveness and love. But certainly they have met her, but not in the context of war. But even there, and because of this, their words were much more of an impact. Why did Chiara Lubich, that grew up in the midst of the waters of war, decided, in the midst of this, decides to live for unity? And in fact, that's the title we chose. Unity is the name of peace to this book, because Chiara, in the midst of the horror of the war, when she experienced hunger, when she saw the cadavers and the bodies destroyed by the war, when she found herself homeless, she understood that there was only one thing to do: to live for something that will not have crumbled, lived for God. Her code of life became the gospel, and unity has become, with time, not only her own ideal, but the ideal of many, many others in the world, and not only Catholic people, because she was Catholic, but even people that belong to many religions. Chiara was not a person who lived only by theory. She was very concrete, and she had a great ability that the scholars speak the humanizations of conflicts. While many other people ask themselves, what is the reason for this and that, and what could be the solution? Chiara chose to ask herself a question: what can I do for the person that is next to me? And she chose to challenge the horror that she lived in, starting by herself, to love. Which question, posing herself, which questions, what does God want from us? So when the Committee for Peace of the Middle East asked me to search out and to look into this aspect and to collaborate with them on this journey, for me, it was a very strong experience, also on a personal level. You cannot write about peace if we don't learn with fatigue to be an instrument of peace. And therefore, working together with them, listening a lot of their experiences, what came out are 10 steps of Chiara, 10 steps, 10 principles that share or offer rather the possibility to have all of us an experience of becoming an instrument of peace. I would like to share with you what this book is not. It's not. First, it's not long. So this already gives you peace. It's not too long. It's not a treaty on peace for experts. Maybe everybody could understand it or can understand. And it's not even, it's not a systematic expositions of all the writings of Chiara on peace. So what is it, this book all about? I imagine it as like an app that you find on your cell phone or mobile phone, something that is pocket size, that you can open all the moments of your day. Is like a peel of hope, almost I would say an interior space where you can compare yourself and check in with a thought, with an idea, and you can take a step towards peace. So imagine it as like a recipe book, where there is a recipe that maybe you have to follow, right? But there is also the beauty of creativity, and we all know it, with ingredients that we find handy, or like an exercise book. We can consider it. First of all, it comes to me to speak about the app. How is it structured then? Let me show it. And so the title, let me share with you my screen. How is the structure? This book has 10 keywords on Chiara's steps, and steps by step. Each word, each passage contains one thought of Chiara, a brief reflection of an expert or an imam or a rabbi, or someone representative from the Orthodox Church, to show the universality of his principles, of his steps. And then there is a challenge that each one of us can take to take a step towards peace. And then there is a piece of history, meaning someone that have already tried it and that can tell us that it is possible. Not that it is easy, but that it is possible. In this book, then, there are 3 definitions, very brief, that is to meditate and then to live it. And I am called to be a builder of peace. And in these 3 perspectives, there are also 3 dimensions. There are myself, neighbor, and the world. I cannot build it by myself. I always need someone else. And then the world. Chiara, for the spirituality of unity, for her concept of peace, there is not an individual or an intimate part of peace. Peace needs to bring change around us, within us, and around us. Maybe many of us think that the government's is the government's task to bring peace, but Chiara firmly believes that peace begins from person, from the people, and then they will have an effect on the governments. And so why is it worth it to have this book on our cell phone like an app, or to have it in our pocket? It's small, because it's like a companion in our journey in the subway, or when we go to work, or on the bus, or still because it's like a cell phone of a friend when it's difficult to make peace, to solve the situations, or still because it's the space, almost like a mirror for ourselves, that we can look at to help us make a choice for peace. And this is what you can ask yourself. We can ask ourselves, how do we make it to be an instrument of peace? And to find an answer in this booklet, and to find also many other companions that, like us, are trying. It's short and it doesn't cost too much. So thank you, Maddalena, of this this presentation that is very energetic and yet very profound as well. I'm asking the one organizing it if we can show the first part of the video that Arlette has recorded, in thinking that the connection might not have been working because it's difficult from the Middle East sometimes to work. Arlette is a Focolarina who lives in Damascus, but she will introduce herself. Hello to everyone. My name is Arlette. I'm Lebanese, and I am from Syrian origins, and I live myself in Damascus. But I will share a little bit how this Committee for Peace has come about, the context in which it was born. As you know, for many years now, we have been witnessing and continue to witness various conflicts and wars in the Middle East region and Africa. Just think of a long conflict in the Holy Land, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, not to mention almost all the other countries in the Middle East area. The scenario of every war is the same all over the world and is known to everyone. Enormous suffering, injured, dead, destruction at various levels, and disastrous, social disasters, economic, psychological consequences, families forced to divide or emigrate, and we will not finish listening the dramas that are being experienced because of the wars. In face of all of this, we have certainly tried with all the communities of the Focolare to strive to raise support, to give hope, to respond to the various needs as far as possible. And we will never stop thanking for prayers, support, and concrete love made of many sacrifices from many people and communities around the world who have given us so much strength to move forward. We have truly experienced true unity and fraternity. We were aware that in all these apparently justified wars, there were other strong objectives, such as the control of natural resources, the arms trades, and interest of all kinds. What can be done to stop all of this, to decrease injustices? In September 2015, we felt in front of all these questions, we felt powerless, but we had hope and faith in God. So in September 2015, I was together with Philippe Hetzeller, Focolarino, in Rome to participate in an international conference of the movement as a representative of the Middle East and North Africa. As every year in this gathering, we try to deepen themes. We share experiences and challenges that we live in every nation. We foresee prospects for the future. We too shared with everyone. We carried in our hearts the cry of the Middle East. I remember that various commissions were formed at the time to reflect and better respond to needs and requirements around the world. Within us, there was this strong push. Why can't also be a permanent peace commission that can reflect, study, act, help to form and spread the culture of peace and dialogue? Perhaps starting with the Middle East, for then continue for all the conflicts in the world. It was greatly welcomed from Maria Voce Meos, the president of the Focolare movement, and from everyone at the center of the movement and all those present. And so a commission was formed afterwards, made up of people from the Middle East and North Africa and from other countries, aided by a network of experts in various fields: politics, economics, education, information, etc. This is the first part of the video that Arlette, in fact, let's greet her. She's following streaming with YouTube. Now, I will give the word to the Professor Farag. That's also is and was part of the Peace Commission. It's a very active member. Would you like to tell us about this experience? And why did you come up with the idea of publishing this book? Thank you, Patrizia. As we were in the 100th years anniversary of Chiara, and we were reaching the conclusion of our work of the committee, what we thought, what can the commission do? And this idea came about this book. With the joy being in Rome for the Congress, so I could speak about it with other people of the commission. So we could say that is the fruit of the work of the Committee for Peace. And this Committee for Peace, we had one goal, the one of studying the possible causes of conflicts in the world, starting from the Middle East. We have been kind of urged by the longest crisis in Syria to try to identify possible ways for sustainable peace. So we've explored and gathered what the Focolare movement is already doing in favor of peace. He has done and is doing it throughout the years. An added value to this committee is the fact that it's made up of people, expert people from the Middle East and also from the West, who live the spirituality of unity. People who tend to have a shared vision, and logically this adds to the value of the committee. We also asked ourselves some starting questions. Are the conflicts spontaneous or provoked? Do they have local causes, or are they influenced by global region powers for various interests? What role do the mass media play? What is the role of war industries? Do conflicts have geopolitical and historical roots? In these 2 years, we have worked focusing on the most important factors of the Middle Eastern situation. These conflicts, are they of today or do they have a history? The causes, the historical causes, political, economic, juridical, institutional, religious, ideological causes on which world interests converge, that go from the trafficking of weapons to the exploitation of energy resources. They have origins of radical religious movements with different names. In the last one of the last decades, to reach also the point of ISIS, from the forced movement of populations up to the manipulation of information. The complexity of the situation was very clear. It's very clear the complexity of the situation. So a clear objective was for us to suggest and disseminate guidelines and strategies to continue working together on education for peace, on humanitarian aid, on the spreading of a culture of peace, based on the importance of the formation and continuous information at 360 degrees. The idea of publishing this book seemed to us that it was a way that could easily, like Maddalena just explained to us, that it was a way to easily reach people, communities, and have a common basis for reflection from which to start. Thank you, Professor Farag. Another question I have for you. Are there other ongoing projects for the commissions? Yes, I can tell you that when we had some works done, as we will see, for example, from the Center of Information of the Focolare, we had organized meetings with a group of journalists, the mass media, presenting this initiative of the Focolare, of what's happening, the committee is happening, and it was deeply appreciated. So the committee has produced 28 main working documents. We are now in the editing phase of his works to also share the documentation from a historical and geopolitical point of view, and offer proposals for action to better interact and work for lasting peace. Thank you. We hope that this work will become, and it was a desire for many of us, that will become a permanent laboratory. Thank you, Professor Farag. Let's listen to the second part, very few minutes from a video of Arlette from Damascus. Is it coming? Is it ready? So the first point we wanted to ask ourselves the cause, and to elaborate a thought concerning the war, a thought that could be shared in order to understand how to form, how to work at the world level, to have the whole work of Mary interact and for peace, trying to reach peace. At the beginning, I remember someone from Jordan said, "The Peace Commission represents for me a great chance and a responsibility. I hope that over the time we will come to a vision of things enlightened by everyone's contribution, and for this we need to be purified by cultural, regional influence and by the opinions that are provided by the media or other influence groups." Following up, we had meetings, seminars, studies. We were saying the focus is today the Middle East, but there are too many conflicts that are suffering from the economic and political front. We need to understand together at the light of the charism, how to bring unity. We need to act together to promote initiatives. We need all of us to learn how to bring a bearer of peace, sharing the respect for the other, esteeming one another. One of the fruits of the committee is this book, Unity is the Name of Peace. It's an important manual that can help us on the path of Chiara Lubich on peace and unity, brings experiences that have been lived throughout the world. It's the journey that we have to undertake to reach peace. It's true what Chiara said, the peace is a question of choices, of personal changes in order to bring about the institutional change, the local, international change. She said it requires a commitment, a courage, a sacrifice, a will to be people of dialogue. Pope Francis, in his messages for the Day of Peace, had underlined several times how much fraternity is the foundation and the way to peace, and how much we had to overcome the indifference in order to conquer peace. In these days, with the coronavirus, we had seen how much we need each other to live this fraternity. It's not easy to witness the fruits of hatred, violence, indifference, but the dream of a united world is printed marked in our hearts, reemerges today more than ever in me. I believe in unity, and we work with all of you to make this dream come true fully on the whole earth, as Chiara said. When there is unity among peoples, there is peace in the world. Thank you. Thank you, Arlette. When there is unity, there is peace in the world. It's really in our theme. Maddalena, I'm coming back to you. Is there a sentence that says, it always touches me every time that you read the book, you want to find a message? every time you write a message, you have to give a message. Here, the message is very clear, but I would like to know what's your personal message that it's like a thread that runs through, a golden thread that runs through the book. Can you speak more about your undertakings? Well, certainly there is something very particular about these 10 steps of Chiara. It's certainly reciprocity. If I have to say what touched me personally, what I would like to transmit as a message is the idea that each one of us has been created as a gift for the others. And even those who we don't like. But in reality, it's what Chiara taught us with her life always. I think the reciprocity is one of the most important characteristics of Chiara. In 1990, when I was in Rome, the first time that I met Chiara Lubich in my life, and she launched a challenge to all of us. Starting from one of the sentences of Jesus that said, to love the other as you would like to be loved. If there isn't this ability within you, it becomes very difficult. I read only one piece, one excerpt that you will find in a book of Chiara was telling us. Love is something very, very active that is not contained in the non-violence. It's not that. Is not solidarity. It means that you don't want to live any longer for yourself, but for the others. And this requires suffering, it requires fatigue, it requires to transforming ourselves from selfish men and women focused on our own interest, on our own things, in daily heroes that day after day are at the service of others, of the neighbors, ready to give also their own lives. And there became the greatest challenge to us. This is the vocation of the one who is young. But I think this is our vocation for all of us, that we remain eternally young, because this dream of peace, this Vetarlet, Monir, that this group of the Commission for Peace has brought about is the idea that we can live in this way, that we have to understand, we have to go in depth in the issues in order to propose a strategy of life, a model, a witness. So this reality of being created as a gift one for another, we ourselves, starting with, beside, independently of our governments, independently of the political choices that others made, this outlook has the ability to create a network, a healthy network, social network, where within each, then peace will become stable. If peace were only the fruit of treaty, why is it that is not working? Nowhere. If the peace would be only the fruits only of agreements, but it's because we need to build the social network, and all of us are called to be builders of this network and to do it together. And the other message that I would like to share is the value of suffering. Maybe it's very linked to this idea that we don't build anything that useful or fruitful. Chiara speaks about this, without accepting the suffering, without accepting the sacrifice that is required, but is needed for peace. We need courage. We need to have the ability to face it. And this idea that is needed sacrifice, it's what inspired the United Nations. We know that is not perfect. I work across from the United Nations, and yeah. Mhm. I'll tell you this, that in this moment, all my American friends that I had invited to this they cannot follow it because YouTube remove a video. And because this is very interesting, because it tells us that we still have a lot of work, because the terms of selections of the one that are following, it has an impact. Many of them are writing to me in this moment, are writing to me that they cannot follow. And this has to be a suffering that builds together with his friends who will write to the direction of YouTube why this material cannot be shown, is not faithful to the principle of YouTube. So this experience, this is exactly the experience that I was speaking of, when this broadcast has been taken. So you can imagine if it is me, only to me imagine, but now it happens to all my friends, my American friends that have been trying to follow this program. But this is something small. I was just speaking, that suffering is it's vital. In the history of this book, there is a lot focus on the value of suffering. And I asked myself, what could be expressed most, if not the witness on the field, for example, the experience of Aziz in Iraq. We give the word to him because he's the one who distributed and who gave hope, meaning to suffering, and ability to overcome. So we'll have Aziz, and yeah, he will speak in English. Aziz, are you there? We don't see you. Here you are. I wanted to share, speaking about this story, we are in an interreligious context, and also the wounds sometimes there are in the name of religions, and they are not according to God's plan. And this is also what Chiara Lubich helped. And I want to show that there is a new link for English, so thank you for the one who prepared that could help out. Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you, Aziz. What touched me the most of Aziz, it's the fact that he had forgiven these people that had hurt him deeply. This great ability of for forgiveness is truly a fruit of a life that has been spent at the service of other people, used because we believe, a life lived believing that peace is possible, and reach the point of forgiveness. Now, we have also Esther Salamanca from Spain is connected with us. If you can show her, Esther. You have also contributed throughout these years through the Commission for Peace with very strong reflections, and especially you deepen the relationship between the European Union and the Middle East. And you always spoke to us about this trying to prevent conflicts. That is a new strategy for many international entity and organization. Could you speak to us about it? Thank you, Patrizia. Yes, in these 2 years, the work of the Commission for Peace and the studying the causes of wars and conflict, I concentrated myself on studying how to prevent conflicts. This is the new strategy of the United Nations as well, because all the work that we do after a war, it's very complicated. And therefore, after so many years, the United Nations, even the new Secretary General, we have said we have to work more in order to prevent conflicts. And now we see also in the European Union, the reflections that I made is that life of unity that comes from this book, it's a very precious contribution, because it's our life that is applied to the building of peace. Like I said, we are builders of peace, peacemakers, and preventing conflicts has many levels, is multi-level. And so it's very important to underline the importance of the local community, and especially among different religions and different Christian denomination. And this is something that is very strong in the Focolare movement. And that's why this book, it's very important to me, is almost a manual for life. We have to have this conscience, because the building of peace comes from the daily life, from the ground. And this is, for me, it's a very, very important booklet. Independently from the theory that we can spend time speaking of, but this is so important to speak about life and to put it into life. So now we still have some times for questions. If there is anyone that through Zoom might want to ask questions, we take away you can write on YouTube, you can write questions and I'll read it to our guests, and or you can, if you are connected with Zoom, you can write it. We can take away the mic and you can speak through Zoom. So there are many possibilities for conversation. So take courage. Let's see what is writing. Oh, there are from Washington. Amy from Washington has asked a question. She has asked, in the media, in the context, in such a polarized context where we find ourselves with the media, where the money and take the first place, if we have suggestions on how to take on such a challenge for peace. Well, from my own experience, I can say that that to spread other news that we can verify. In the position where I find myself, someone else asks me about the political choices of places where I am. So many times I invite the people that write articles to go beyond the tweets, to go to the truth of things happen, not to stop at the surface of what we hear, to keep on looking for the many aspects of choices and aspects. And most important is to create occasions in which we can have witnesses, in where we can speak together, we can share. Also, maybe a chance that we can listen to Amy from Washington. So when we touch in the social tissue, when we have this experience in the community, then we kind of give less importance to this media. They are an attraction, but we have to exercise our ability to choose, our ability to be free, to exercise freedom, and the ability to build something else, not because these media, that bring us away from peace will not exist anymore, but because we have space of building something different. And I know so many other people that write maybe with a blog or maybe with a weekly contributions that are bringing about a difference and that share and are telling stories about this network of peace. And I can assure you that when they will increase, when they will become many, they will have an influence on the big social media, on the big media, because they will have, and this difficult is true, but none of us wants to stay at what doesn't cost. I'm reading a lot of messages that are on the chat of YouTube. And then I give a word to Maria Bencinelli that has asked to speak from Boston, said, greetings from Argentina, Egypt, Venezuela, Brazil, the Focolare from Cono Sud, from Italy, from Loppiano, our little international city, from the Middle East. I give the word now to Bentiveni, that is here with Zoom, if you can. Can you hear me? Yes, yes. I'm very happy about this chance that also I can see many of the people of the Commission of Peace to which I had the honor to take a part of. And also I want to thank Maddalena that these documents from this feedback that we had, you have been able to put together such a work that I can't wait to read. And I saw that is already for sale as your book, but I haven't bought it yet. I want to say only one thing of this experience and then to ask you a question. The strongest experience was I was a part of a West, right, of this committee for the Middle East as a Westerner, but we have reached the point of becoming one reality. But this required, from my part, I arrived with the attitude almost of saying, what can we do for you that are in a war zone or in conflict? And then understanding that I only had to make room to the greatest suffering of his people, but also to make room for the greatest richness that they have. And they have meetings and meetings for which we ask, explain us more, explain us more, explain us more, in order to reach the point to understand a little bit more this huge complexity in order to be able to love more. And it was for me a human, cultural, rich, very rich experience. And we also had the desire, very strong desire, to have an instrument that we could invite everyone to stand up, starting with the members of the Focolare movement, but everyone to be able to stand and walk as builders of peace. So there was a moment that you said in the ideal of Chiara Lubich, in her own proposal or strategy, there is not, in Italian, is intimate experience in the sense that is only concerning the individual. And I want to provoke you in a certain sense, because sometimes in the commitment for peace, and the commitment that is also public and externalized and public, we kind of withdrew. We are not a movement for peace, we are the movement for unity. So it's almost seemed to us that reaching peace is almost too little, and yet unity is the name of peace. Where did you find the passage from a personal dimension of witnessing, of living it, very, very important, peace starts from me, to a peace that becomes a commitment, that becomes a social and civil commitment? In many of the stories that I gathered in this book, there is this social dimension very, very strongly underlined. There is also the intimate dimension of a personal choice. That is also the dimension of putting ourselves together, also of the other one, and the dimension of the world. These three dimensions cannot do without each other. They cannot exist without one another. And so when this part is missing in the world, so what can I do in order to change the world, to change together with? So in putting it into practice, there is something still missing. There is a stimulus that is needed. Chiara did not dream of a movement for peace, but for her, without peace, unity is not complete. Unity encloses, embraces peace, but peace is one of the conditions for unity, is the condition, the necessary condition for peace. And therefore, throughout this meeting with the Committee for Peace, I could also read many contributions like Professor Salamanca, Professor Buonomo, where there is the challenge of this peace, this network of peace and social network, and therefore through which a peace that is also expanded on treaty could become permanent. A friend of mine from the community of Sant'Egidio a few months ago was at the table for an agreement to work on peace for Sudan. And he told me, you know, we are here to apply the dialogue of the method of dialogue as Chiara Lubich taught us, as Andrea Riccardi taught us. We have these teachers, and here we are at the table. At this table, there were head of states, ambassadors, there was this friend of mine, but there was this conviction that this peace that was lived in their own community for many, many years, they could sit now at the table with the head of states, indicating a journey, a way also for Sudan. I would love that next year we'll find ourselves at this table, because this book is open book. It doesn't finish with 30 pages, but every step that is proposed becomes the story of each one of us, of our own community. Maybe next year we'll find ourselves with 300 stories of peace that will prove to us that this strategy is working for me, it works in my family, in my civil community, in my little municipal town, and will have a huge impact. Thank you, Maddalena. And thank you, Maria, to you as well. So here we have messages of gratitude for the theme that was chosen, and especially for the publication of this book. At the end, we'll give you some indications of you. So greetings from Colombia, from the Amazon. Greetings to you, especially Portugal, Athens, Brazil. They are following us. Someone is asking us if there are tools that are more efficacious tools for communication, for spreading the culture of peace. Who wants to answer? Maybe Maddalena, you have already shared it. Well, certainly I would like to hear it from the others that are present. I don't know if the questions wants a list of, I didn't know. There is a website that is very interesting here in the USA, Blue Vibes, I think, but is sharing this story. In this moment of pandemic, they are sharing stories of sharing, of kindness, that are obscure, that are maybe they don't come to light, you know, in this moment from the media. But two books that have been published with this have reached millions of, they have sold millions. And so Cittanuova is also sharing this story. So these tools exist. We need to look for it. They don't come handy. They don't come out at the first click. That's why I insist. Maybe we know that journalists write it, contact, ask him or her to have a Zoom, no matter where he is in the world. It's very easy today. These are all tools. But if a person, Patrizia, this person that has asked, desires a list where you can find. I can also give some suggestions. Maybe I can write to her afterwards or him. But really, there are these tools. Let's not believe they don't exist. And I can tell you even more. One of the greatest channels on this country, every Friday, they conclude with 5 minutes called The Good News, something that stimulates a social change within a community. But there is also a school in San Francisco, for this Seattle. So these creating a network. There are so many realities that want to try to share these new different words, and then ask Aziz for Iraq. Ask Munir for Egypt. We have a possibility of this network, worldwide network, and when there is an email, you can write, you know, then Patrizia says we'll share it afterwards. And Sarah is asking us, Sarah, do you want to put the video? She has asked a question, if you can echo. Maybe some of you know Sarah, introduce yourself. I am a journalist of Cittanuova. Ciao to everyone. Thank you for you have been sharing with us. Maddalena before spoke about good news when she was the editor at Living Cittanuova. We launched a good news program. So I will ask each one of you, which seeds of peace, which good news are you able to see during this pandemic? Thank you. Bringing ourselves up to date in what's happening today. So the question is for each one of you, Munir, Esther, who wants to start? To the editor. Maybe I can answer. This pandemic is not the first one, because I've worked for the last 20 years to the World Health Organization. So I've lived the 2002, 2003, etc., up until SARS. The good news, it forced us to tough choices compared to what had happened before. The good news of this that we are living is not only for what concerns health. This is true. We had to act with responsibility, like Pope Francis said, with prudence and obedience. But we see many other things. The concept of listening, we're running always. To live the community like the family, to have the sense of what is the most precious value. There is not any longer the well-to-do country that is not taking care of their own people. We are becoming the common house altogether, as the Pope spoke about the Laudato Si. We can speak about many things, but in the concept of the book, unity, we see this. The good news, absolutely, onto many levels, it has brought us more one, more united, more in peace with ourselves, with the one that are next to us, a country that helps another country. And this truly, and truly from that side, we can speak about the good news. Thank you, Munir. We also, a question maybe for Esther Salamanca. What is the role of United Nations for peace? Very, very direct question. In 2 minutes, you want the answer? The Italian is not my language. So if we go to the origins of the United Nations, and truly it's prevention, because I don't remember how you say it in Italian, to prevent, the war from happening to the next generations. The problem is that for many, many years now, the work of United Nations concentrated on the Security Council, so peace as a security, international security. And then he started to understand that peace was not only the absence of war, but he started another kind of conversation of human rights, on the development. And so it went ahead with a much larger perspective, precisely because the Security Council cannot have a role as we thought, or they thought before, to prevent conflicts. Maybe they can prevent the Third World War, maybe as an idea, but practically speaking, the implementation of Chapter 7 of the United Nations could not prevent many conflicts within the states, many, many causes of conflicts. And so from the last 10 years on, they have found another approach that I cannot explain here, but involves the whole system of United Nations, not only the Security Council, but the peace, the prevention of conflict is a mission of each organization within the United Nations, both health, human rights, so each one. And so the General Secretary has spoken to all the interventions. He has launched the lasting peace. He cannot explain too much, I don't have time, but not to speak of peace only within the United Nations as a security and as a reaction to conflict, but to work in preventing the causes that can bring to conflict and to war. This will be like a question, Aziz. What is the seed of peace for you? What do you have within you that speaks about peace? How do you feel about it?
For you? Me as a person,
what do you have
I do for peace?
That speaks about peace.
This is your question?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, it's simple. It's to live the present moment and this is to see what I can do in this moment with family. So how I am going to create peace with my family, because it's the only people who they are inside me, because we are in quarantine and it's a coronavirus, so we cannot go outside. So the person who is with me now, it's my family. So it's a big challenge to be peaceful with my sister, with my mother, with my father, because it's not always easy. It's been like 45 days in the home. So yeah, but how did this is more important, because the first thing it's like to believe in myself and to have a confidence in myself. And when I do that, I find the power or my talent to be peacemaker. So it's easy. Don't complicate the life, and we will see there is always solution.
Ok, allora per Aziz sicuramente il seme di pace
Thank you, Aziz. Thank you, Maddalena. From Buenos Aires, Elizabeth Gatti is asking a very interesting question. This is the last one, yes. How can we foresee this contribution during a context of war that brings a social injustice, the promotion of an unjust system that eliminates people, meaning that does not take into consideration people? Then someone can answer when we speak about the technical informations about the book. But certainly, investigating this strategy of peace, each one has a responsibility in the context where he or she lives. It's true that we have a macro level, but do not delegate to the macro level. There is something, an injustice, something that is not bringing equality. Ask ourselves, what can I do so to humanize the conflict and the social injustice on which Chiara's strategy is insisting on? You will see in many of the stories that are shared, for example, in the conflict in Colombia with the drugs lords, how can you bring about a difference when you have been one? Or again, in Sardinia, a little isle in Italy, where a fabrics of arms, an industry, a factory, sorry, has been converted into an arm industry. So the population has been able to compel the Italian government to bring about norms, to take a commitment on to export arms, not in war conflicts countries. So logically, there are always changes, always choices that need to be made. What fascinated me is this, not to delegate to other what I can do. Peace starts from me. These resolutions can start from us. Sometimes it's a little contribution. Maybe you don't think it has any impact, but it inspires someone else to bring about a change or to start a discussion group. Maybe it brings some inspirations. I think each one of us present here can say it loudly. It happened in this way. Maybe logically prayers, maybe praying can give strength or a suggestion, maybe something not tangible, and yet it gives courage. I can tell you in many things, I can tell you is my experience. I've seen it, I've touched it, and I can tell you it is possible. Thank you, Maddalena. We are going towards the conclusion of this moment together. And it seemed to us that is of fundamental to share and to bring about an awareness of this conscious. All of us should feel called on personally, even though we don't live in country with conflicts, but the question of peace, it calls on each one of us. We need to bring about a greater awareness that brings us to act and to react, kind of building a lab of dialogue, like a master practices permanent. Maria Voce and Meos in 2016, in occasion of a UNESCO conference called Reinvent Peace, Emmaus Maria Voce said, dialogue is a strategy, is not a method. It's a vision with a long glance, and it doesn't have immediate, it has immediate goals. It invests in the future, it builds dialogues, the relationship, without neglecting the present time. And we make our own the words of Jesus Morin, that to the Committee for Peace said, unity is a strength that is able to generate energy that break through. So let's believe in this work that we are all called to do. And concerning our book, you can already download it from web. It's already available in the major, it costs €2.90. You find also the book costs €5 with paper that is also printed in these days. We thank Città Nuova editor. So if you can put our email address so that you can write, to which you can write and send your steps for peace and your proposals for peace. And it's coming back. Yeah. Here it is. I would like to remind each one, and this I tell you with the heart, it said to spread and to sign and to spread it, the petition against the embargo for Syria that is promoted by New Humanity. Thank you everyone for having been connected with us from many different parts in the world. Let's speak, let's open the mic and we can all greet each other. And a special greeting to Arlette that has remained in Damascus. She could not be connected, but we will have a chance to be able to speak with her. And thank you for all the one that I've worked so that with. So they thank also the translation, and I thank you. Yes, thank you.